Today I'm going to talk about how to make Python statements repeat. We're going to be using the while statement. So we're looking at repetition. So as usual, start at my homepage, andawson.net, then click on the schedule and click on any of these links. This will take you to the schedule, and you'll notice under processing and selection we have a link for repetition and string formatting. String formatting I'm going to leave until after the first quiz, so it won't be on the first quiz. But repetition will be on the first quiz. And let's click on repetition. Now the first statement we're going to look at is the while statement, and we call it a while loop. It's a looping statement. Looping means repeating. And the second repeating statement we're going to use will be the for loop. And later on we'll see string formatting and how to put a loop inside another loop. We saw how to put an if statement inside another if statement. That's called a nested if statement. In the same way we could have a nested while statement or a nested for statement. But for now, let's make it nice and simple. We're going to use the while loop. So I'd like you to open up an idle window. So go into Python, open idle, and you will see the idle shell window. So this is Python 3 shell window. And as usual, open up a new file. And let's save the file to the desktop. File, save as. And you can save it anywhere you like. I save it to the desktop so I can remember where it is. And you can move it later. So I'm going to call mine while.py. And it's on the desktop, and save. Now let's have a look at how the while statement works. Now if you remember the if statement, we had something like this. Score is 91 if score is greater than or equal to 50. Don't forget the colon. When you press enter, gives you your 4 spaces indented. Then we can put in whatever statement we wish. So here we can say print, you passed. And we might also want to print, well done. And there we go. Now if we run this, what Python is going to do is going to take the integer 91 and assign it to the variable called score. Then at the next line, this will be evaluated. Now this is either going to be true or false. If it's true, these 2 lines will be executed. If it's false, nothing happens. So let's run. And there you go, you passed. So let's go back to look at this again. This thing here is known as a condition. It's a logical expression or a Boolean expression. Its value will be either true or false. I just included a space there just to make it more easy to read. We usually put a space before and after any operator, just to make it easy to read. Okay, so this is going to be evaluated. If it's true, then these statements are executed. If it's not, then if there was an else clause here, the else part would be executed if the condition was false. Now, the while statement also uses a condition, and it works like this. While, let me see, let's start off with the value n. N is 10. I'm going to put a line between this part and this part of the program just to show they are, well, just to make it easier to separate the two. A space line between any statement will be ignored, so you can have as many spaces between your statements as you like. So here I'm saying n is 10, while n is greater than 1. So what I'm saying here is look to see if this is true. If it is true, then I want you to print n. Now, as long as n is greater than 1, it will print n. I've got to be a little bit careful here because unless n changes, it will always be greater than 1 because I set n to 10. If n is 10, this is always true unless n changes. And if it's always true, it will print n forever. It's known as an infinite loop. I'll show you that later. So what we're going to do, we're going to subtract a value from n. So we're going to say n is assigned n minus 1. Now what's going to happen here is n was 10. 10 minus 1 is 9. 9 then becomes assigned to n. N becomes 9. So look at this statement. This does not mean equal to. This wouldn't make any sense. N is equal to n minus 1. What it actually means is evaluate this expression and put the result into the variable on the left. So you can have the same variable on both sides of the assignment operator because this side is evaluated first. If n is 10, 10 minus 1 is 9. Then 9 is assigned to n. So the value of n is in effect changing. It's going down by 1. And we do this sort of thing often. We'll subtract 1 from n, assign the result to n. So let's see what happens now. Let's just look at this. N is 10. N is greater than 1, so it prints 10. Then it changes n to 9. Now, at this point, when it comes to the end of the statements, different to the if statement, Python will go back up to check the condition again. That's why it's called looping. It sort of goes down the statements, then it goes back up, and then it goes down the statements, and then it goes back up. So, when Python subtracts 1 from 10 to make 9, goes back up and says, okay, is 9 greater than 1? If it is, then it will do this. It will print 9, and then 9 minus 1 is 8. 8 is assigned to n, so n becomes 8. Then it goes back up. Is 8 greater than 1? Yes, it is. So it will print 8. It will subtract 1 from 8, making 7. Assign 7 to n. Go back up. Is 7 greater than 1? Yes. So it will print 7. N becomes 6. Is 6 greater than 1? Yes. So it prints 6. N becomes 5. Is 5 greater than 1? Yes. So it's going to keep going as long as n is greater than 1. If n is equal to 1, then this is false. So when n is 2, you subtract 1, n becomes 1. This is now false because 1 is not greater than 1. When this becomes false, these are not repeated anymore. So Python will go down and to the next statement under the while statement. So let's just say print end of program. So this line is not repeated. The lines that are repeated are indented to the same level under the while. So this is repeated, goes back to check this. This is repeated, goes back to check this. When this is false, as soon as this is false, these are not executed. It will then come down to the line following the while keyword. So that's the statement that begins at the beginning of the line. In a straight line, you can see all the statements are starting at the beginning of the line. We have indentation with the if statement, and we have indentation with the while statement. So don't delete those spaces. Those are part of the syntax of the if and the while statements. So let's run this now. Now we know here it's going to say you pass well done. Then it's going to set n a value of 10. If 10 is greater than 1, it prints n. So it will print 10, and then it'll 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, and so on. So let's see what it does here. I'm going to move this. Now we have changed the program. You see the little star there. So I'm going to save, and you see the star disappears. And now there's my program. I'm going to run. And there it is. Now notice it didn't print the number 1, because when n became 1, 1 is not greater than 1, so it doesn't print 1. The last one it prints is 2. And there you go. Now if you want it to print the number 1 as well, what you can do is, let me see, n, while n is greater than or equal to 1, that means that if n is equal to 1, or greater than 1, then it will print. So let's close the old shell, run this again, save, and now it prints the number 1 as well as all the other numbers. So there you have the while loop. Now if you want to read about it, go down to section 5.1. Let me put my programs back up there. So these are the programs here. I'll put them back up on the screen. But if you go to the Python 3 repetition string formatting webpage, which you can find on my resources, I'm just going to click on that page now and scroll down to the while loop. It's got an expression. It's got the explanation here, and you can read about that. One thing I should say is that Python will consider 1 as true and 0 as false. So I'm going to show you how we can use that. Here you can see a little program. X is set to 1. This is similar to the one we did actually. We'll skip over that one. And right, so here I've got what's known as an infinite loop, a loop that will go on forever. And now Python will look at the number 1, and that is representing the value true. So 1 represents true, 0 represents false, and you could use them in a program in this way. This will actually give you an infinite loop. Let's go back and create an infinite loop. I'm going to show you this one. So here is our old program, and you can type that in. And so if you pause this video, you can type in exactly like this. Now don't forget, these spaces are automatically supplied when you press enter. So don't type in, you don't need to type in the spaces. They will automatically be supplied. If you mess around with these spaces, you may find that your program doesn't work. So that's a warning. So I'm now going to close this old shell, and let's delete this part here. And I'm going to say while, let's start off with saying while 0, print, let's say while 0. Now remember, 0 represents false. So here, if this is false, then this statement will never be executed. 0 is always 0. It's never going to change. 0 is 0. So while 0, 0 represents false, this will not be executed because this is false. So the only thing that will happen here is it's going to say end of program. So let's run that. So it works. 0, in this case, is representing the value, the Boolean value, false. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to use it like this, because if you say while 0, this will never, ever execute. So the only thing that happens is it skips the while statement and prints end of program. Now there are times when you might want to have an infinite loop, and then we can break out of an infinite loop. But if you have an infinite loop, if you have something like this represents true. This will actually repeat forever, and you'll notice when it runs, it's going to print hello forever until actually you close the program. So So let's see what happens. So this represents true, while true means that this will be executed forever because true, 1 is always true, never changes. And there you can see this thing is executing. It actually looks static here, but it's printing hello over and over again so quickly that you can't even see. Actually, you might be able to see at the bottom of the screen, the little flashing here, it's printing hello, hello, and it's just filling up the screen. And this will never stop because it's known as an infinite loop. It will go on forever. So to get out of this, what you have to do is close the window, and it's going to say your program is still running because this is an infinite loop. It says, do you want to kill it? Now, kill actually is a programming word. It means to stop that particular program or process going. You want to stop it. So in this case we say yes, and now it's stopped. So later on I'll show you how you can get out of an infinite program elegantly, and that's shown in some of the example programs. Now, reminder, example programs you can find from my home page. Let's go back to my, so we're looking at programs starting with 05. Now, if you go back to my home page, and so again, if you go through the schedule, click on the schedule for the course, click on Python example programs, example Python 3 programs. So that link you'll find in lots of places. Now you want to scroll down to programs that start with 05, and that's about a third of the way down. And here you can see programs and some of the example programs using the while statement. Here I'm using the 1 to show you how this works. And so I've got an example here of using an infinite loop, but breaking out of the loop. So there is an example there. So what I suggest is we could run this one. This is 55.py, 05-05.py. If I copy that and put it into my, paste it into my program. So let's print. Let's change this a little bit. This represents true, so this loop repeats forever. Print, let's say print hello. And then it says press Y to end this loop. If the answer is equal to Y, I'm going to say, do you want to end this program? And this program will end. No, I should say this is the end of this program. Maybe put that. So what's going to happen here is this represents true. So it will print hello. Then it's going to ask you to enter Y if you want to end this loop. So answer will have a value, whatever you input. Now remember, input always inputs a string. So answer is a string, and you're going to compare a string with a string. This is a string. So if they input Y, then it's going to say this is the end of the program, and break. Notice break is orange, it's a keyword. It's used to break out of a loop. So if you've got an infinite loop, this is one way you can break out. If you break out of a loop, then the loop ends and the program continues with the first line after the loop. Now this is the first line after the loop. We know that because it's directly underneath the while keyword. So let's see what happens. So here it says press Y to end this loop. Okay, well I'm going to say no. So it says press Y to end this loop. I'll say L. Press Y to end this loop. U. So it will continue until I press Y. Let's move that up. I'll move it over that. And move this here. So if I continue, so press Y to end the loop. If I press I, it continues. But if I press Y, then it will end the loop. And then it says, this is the end of the program. Have a nice day. So this is one way you can have an infinite loop using while one, and break allows you to break out of a loop so that the program will continue after the end of the while loop. The end of the while loop is the line before the first line that's underneath the statement while. Okay, that's a good start to the introduction to the while loop. And I'll now, I think that'll do. The next program I'm going to show you is how to use, well, remind you how to use the break statement and also how to use the continue statement in a loop. So I'm going to start the next video reminding you of the break and the continue statements inside of a loop. Okay, I'll leave it there.